He handed the valet his keys with his mistress on his arm, feeling untouchable, but when the hotel staff stopped bowing to him, and started bowing to the woman stepping out of the executive elevator, he realized he'd just walked into his wife's boardroom. Alistair Sterling thought he was the king of his empire. Tonight at the legendary Grand Meridian, he planned to impress Tiffany Vane, a woman half his wife's age, with champagne, a penthouse view, and the thrill of getting away with it all. But the moment the concierge said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, but the owner has requested to handle your check-in personally," everything changed. The lobby fell silent, the staff straightened, and from the private elevator reserved for executives, Simone Montgomery-Sterling emerged, not as the quiet, graceful wife he'd left at home, but as the chairwoman of the hotel he'd just tried to defile. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She simply smiled and said, "Welcome to my hotel, darling. Before we see what happens next, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. And if you love stories of perfect revenge, make sure to like and subscribe to Revenge Unscripted, because karma always finds a way." Alistair Sterling adjusted his Patek Philippe as the town car glided through Manhattan's glittering heart. Beside him, Tiffany Vane scrolled through her phone, her laughter light and uncomplicated. Everything Simone had stopped being years ago. Or so he told himself. Another charity gala tonight. He'd told his wife that morning, kissing her forehead with practiced tenderness. "The Singapore investors need FaceTime. You understand." Simone had nodded, elegant as always in her silk robe, her eyes unreadable behind her coffee cup. She always understood. That was the problem with old money wives. They were raised to understand, to accommodate, to disappear into the wallpaper of a man's ambitions. Alistair had built an empire on her family's connections, leveraged her trust fund for his first major acquisition, and wore her maiden name like a crown at every country club that mattered. But in his mind, he'd earned it all himself. She was just the decorative half of a power couple, content with her museum boards and garden parties. "You're thinking about her again," Tiffany murmured, tracing a finger along his jaw. "Not anymore," he lied smoothly. He hadn't thought about Simone in months, not really. She was furniture. Beautiful, expensive furniture that came with the penthouse. Tonight was about celebrating himself. The Grand Meridian had always represented the apex of his success. Walking through those doors with Tiffany felt like the ultimate victory lap. He had no idea he was walking into an ambush 3 months in the making. The moment Alistair's Ferragamo loafers hit the marble of the Grand Meridian's lobby, something felt wrong. The doorman's smile was strained. The concierge wouldn't meet his eyes. And the usual obsequious rush to assist him, the performance he'd come to expect from luxury staff, never materialized. "Mr. Sterling," the front desk manager said, his voice oddly formal. "Welcome. If you'll wait just a moment, please." "Wait." Alistair's eyebrow arched. "I have a reservation. The presidential suite." "Yes, sir. However, the owner has requested to personally oversee your check-in this evening." Tiffany giggled nervously, squeezing his arm. "Owner? Is that normal?" It wasn't. The Grand Meridian had been owned by the Rothenberg family for generations. They never interfered with guest services. They barely visited the property. Alistair's irritation sharpened into something colder. Around them, the lobby had gone silent. A concierge whispered into her headset. A bellhop shifted his weight, eyes darting toward the executive elevators. Then he saw it. The staff weren't looking at him with reverence anymore. They were looking at him with pity. The brass elevator doors opened with a resonant chime, and the lobby staff straightened as one, their attention pivoting away from Alistair entirely. Someone was coming. Someone who commanded the room without saying a word. Alistair turned. ready to complain to whatever pretentious new owner had purchased his favorite hotel. And then his blood turned to ice. Simone Montgomery-Sterling stepped into the lobby like she owned it. Because she did. She wore a charcoal Armani suit that made her look like she just stepped out of a boardroom where men twice her age had signed away their legacies. Her hair, usually soft and carefully neutral, was pulled into a severe chignon. And where her wedding ring should have been, the Montgomery family crest gleamed on her right hand, the signet ring her grandfather had worn when he'd built half of the eastern seaboard's infrastructure. She wasn't his wife anymore. She was a dynasty. "Mr. Sterling," Simone said, her voice warm and professional, as if addressing a stranger. "How lovely to see you. And you've brought a guest." Alistair couldn't speak. His brain refused to process what he was seeing. Simone, his Simone, who arranged flowers and wrote thank you notes in fountain pen, standing in the Grand Meridian as if she'd been carved from its marble. Tiffany's hand slipped from his arm. "Alistair." Her voice was small now, uncertain. Simone's gaze moved to Tiffany with the clinical interest of an entomologist examining a specimen. "Miss Vane, isn't it? Charming. I do hope you'll enjoy your stay. Though I'm afraid there's been a slight issue with the reservation." "Issue?" Alistair finally found his voice, but it came out strangled. "The presidential suite," Simone said, consulting an iPad a staff member had appeared with, "was booked using a corporate account that has since been restructured. I'm sure you understand. Welcome to my hotel, darling." The word darling landed like a knife between his ribs. The lobby crowd had grown. It always did at the Grand Meridian during cocktail hour. Society figures, foreign dignitaries, old money in cashmere moving through like elegant sharks. And now they were all watching. Simone gestured gracefully toward one of the velvet settees. "Please sit. Let's resolve this like civilized people." Alistair remained standing, his jaw clenched so hard it ached. Tiffany hovered beside him, her earlier confidence evaporating. "That's a beautiful necklace, Miss Vane," Simone continued, her tone conversational. "Cartier, isn't it? The Love Collection. 18-karat rose gold." Tiffany's hand flew to her throat. "I thank you. My husband has excellent taste," Simone said, and the word husband echoed through the marble hall. "Though I do wonder, was that purchased on the Sterling Industries corporate card? The one ending in 4492. The blood drained from Alistair's face. "Because I had a fascinating conversation with our accounting department last month. It seems that card has been used quite liberally. Jewelry, lingerie, a weekend in the Hamptons." Simone's smile never wavered. "All charged to company expenses, which, as you may know, are funded in part by Montgomery family trusts." A woman in pearls gasped softly nearby. "Simone," Alistair hissed. "Not here." "Oh, but where else?" Simone's eyes glittered. "You chose this hotel, darling. I'm simply providing customer service. Speaking of which, that card was canceled approximately 60 minutes ago. So I'm afraid your reservation is no longer valid." Tiffany made a small wounded sound. Simone looked at her almost kindly. "The exit is behind you, dear." The office was all dark wood and leather, insulated from the lobby's murmur by walls thick enough to swallow screams. Simone sat behind the mahogany desk that had once belonged to her grandfather, her hands folded, every inch the executive. Alistair stood because he refused to sit like a supplicant. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." Simone opened a folder, her movements precise. "November 16th to be exact. You told me you were in Boston for the Harmon acquisition. You were actually in the meatpacking district with Miss Vane. You had me followed." "I had you audited," Simone corrected. There's a difference. Private investigators are so pedestrian. I prefer forensic accountants. She slid a bound report across the desk. Alistair didn't touch it. He didn't need to. The tabs alone told the story. Restaurants, hotels, gifts, all cross-referenced with dates he'd claimed to be traveling for business. The Grand Meridian went on the market 8 weeks ago, Simone continued. The Rothenberg family wanted a discreet sale. I made them an offer they couldn't refuse, mostly because I didn't lowball them the way you taught me to. You bought a hotel to humiliate me? I bought a hotel because it's an excellent investment. Simone's smile was glacial. That it also happened to be your favorite place to flaunt your infidelity? That's just good fortune. Alistair's fists clenched. You can't prove. 16 instances of adultery. All documented. She tapped the folder. Text messages recovered from cloud backups you forgot to delete. Credit card statements. Witness testimony from hotel staff who remembered you. Did you know Miss Vane isn't the first? Just the most recent. The room tilted. The divorce papers were cream vellum, bound in leather, as elegant as everything Simone touched. Alistair stared at them as if they might bite. The prenuptial agreement, Simone said, her voice steady and businesslike, contained a morality clause. I'm sure you remember. You insisted on it to protect the Sterling name. Her lips curved without warmth. It states that any spouse who engages in infidelity, using marital assets forfeits their claim to shared property. That was meant for you, Alistair said stupidly. I know. Simone leaned back in her chair. You thought I'd be the one to stray. That I'd get bored with charity luncheons and find some tennis instructor. Instead, you used my money to fund your affairs. Money from the Montgomery Trust. Money that was mine before you ever put a ring on my finger. She produced another document, this one stamped with a law firm's insignia. My attorneys have frozen all joint accounts. The penthouse? Purchased with my inheritance. It's in my name. The Hampton house? Same. Your Aston Martin? Leased through a company I now control 51% of. Thanks to shares you never realized I'd been quietly purchasing for 2 years. Alistair's legs finally gave out. He sank into the chair. You have your clothes, your watch, and whatever personal accounts you maintain separately. Everything else stays with me. Simone slid a pen across the desk. Sign and you can leave tonight with some dignity. Refuse and I'll file publicly. The tabloids already have the story. I just haven't given them permission to run it yet. Outside, thunder rumbled. Alistair picked up the pen. The paparazzi were waiting when Alistair emerged onto Fifth Avenue. His single suitcase held by a bellhop who'd been tipped generously by Simone to ensure maximum humiliation. Flashbulbs erupted. Questions pelted him like hail. Mr. Sterling, is it true your wife owns the Grand Meridian? Did she catch you with your mistress? How does it feel to be divorced? Alistair shoved through them, his face a mask of rage and ruin, and disappeared into the night that had swallowed his empire whole. Upstairs, in the penthouse suite she'd reserved for herself, Simone stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows and watched the city glitter. She held a glass of Chateau Margaux, from the wine cellar she now owned, and allowed herself the smallest smile. She'd spent 15 years as Mrs. Alistair Sterling, believing that supporting her husband was the same as building a life. She dimmed her own brilliance so his could shine. She'd turned the Montgomery legacy into his stepping stone. Never again. Her phone buzzed. A text from her attorney. Paperwork filed. It's done. Simone raised her glass to her reflection. Not to revenge, revenge was cheap and she was anything but. To reclamation. She'd always been the power behind the throne. Now she was the throne itself. and the empire she'd build from here would be entirely, gloriously, her own.
This is Revenge Unscripted. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share.